Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today we are going to learn about a very important topic, that is environmental impact assessment. Being civil engineers, in your field you will be involved in designing and construction of various development projects such as water supply, sewerage, roads, highways, airports, dams, industries, housing schemes, etc. So for all of these construction projects, environmental impact assessment is a legal requirement in Pakistan. So you have to deal with this whether being with the client or being with the contractor, being with the consultant, you have to deal with this important issue of environmental impact assessment. So let's discuss what is environmental impact assessment, how to conduct it, and what are basically the outcomes of this environmental impact assessment. So let's first define what is an environmental impact assessment, commonly termed as EIA. This is basically the assessment of all the potential environmental, social and health effects that would result on account of location, construction, design and operation of the proposed development. The purpose of the assessment is to ensure that decision makers consider the environmental impacts when deciding whether or not to proceed with a particular project. Hence, EIA is a tool for ensuring sustainable development. In Pakistan and almost all other countries, environmental impact assessment is a legal requirement for all the developments. The statutes of the federal government in Pakistan and the provincial governments stipulate that no proponent of a project shall commence any construction or operation unless it has filed with the relevant agency an environmental impact assessment report. This is the requirement for both public as well as private proponents projects. So this figure represents the overall procedure or process involved to conduct an environmental impact assessment. So when the project proposal is identified, the very first step to conduct an EIA is the screening step. Screening is done to decide if and at what level EIA should be applied. The outcome of the screening step would be whether an EIA is required or not, and whether EIA is required at a smaller scale, which is called Initial Environmental Examination, IEE. So after the screening, the next step is the scoping, and the scoping process helps to identify the important issues and prepare the terms of reference TOR to conduct the EIA. And as you can see, public is involved in this step while identifying the key important issues, and to prepare the TOR, public means relevant stakeholders should be involved in this step. The next step is impact analysis, which means that potential impacts of the project are predicted and the effects of a proposal, and they are evaluated based on their significance. After analysis of the impacts, the significant or adverse environmental impacts should be mitigated, and to do that, a mitigation and impact management plan is devised. The purpose of mitigation is to establish measures to prevent, reduce or compensate for the impacts, and management plan helps to implement the mitigation measures advised. After all these analysis of impacts and mitigation and management plan, EIA report is submitted to the relevant agency, and this report is commonly termed as Environmental Impact Statement, EIS. This report is submitted for review to the relevant agency. The relevant agencies in Pakistan are Federal Environmental Protection Agency for Islamabad Capital Territory and Provincial Environmental Protection Agencies in Punjab, Sindh, KP, etc. At the review step, public is again involved, particularly for EIA's Environmental Impact Assessment. Public hearings are conducted. The EIA report is placed in public libraries for open access to public, to relevant stakeholders and to the experts in this field, so that they can also review and give their feedback related to that project or its environmental impact assessment. After review by the agency and the public, the decision making is done to approve or to reject the proposal. So decision makers, that is the relevant agencies, would approve or disapprove the project. If the project is not approved, its components creating major adverse environmental impacts would be redesigned and the EIA should be resubmitted with revised design of the project. If the project is approved environmentally based on the environmental impact statement, then comes the implementation of the mitigation and management plan and follow-up in the form of monitoring and auditing of the impacts which were predicted at the stage of impact analysis. The data obtained from the implementation and follow-up stage would also be helpful for conducting next or future EIAs relevant to the similar projects. So while conducting an EIA, the main processes or main steps include screening, scoping, impact analysis, mitigation measures, and monitoring and management plan. So let's discuss about these 5 steps briefly one by one. So first is the screening process. So screening, as defined on the previous slide, is the process of deciding on whether an initial environmental examination, IEE, or environmental impact assessment is required or it is not required for any project. In Pakistan, the decision on whether an EIA or IEE should be conducted is based on the guidelines provided by Environmental Protection Agency. They were provided by Pakistan EPA in 2000 and they are referred to as a review of IEE and EIA regulations of 2000. Later on, after 18th Amendment, when provincial environmental protection agencies were established, they have issued their own regulations, but at the moment they are similar to what was issued by Pak EP at federal level, that are IEE EIA regulations of 2000. So in these regulations, the overall procedure of preparing and filing an EIA, the fees applicable for IEE and EIA, and the duration for which the review process will be carried out. So these sort of things are explained first, and then in Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, the list of those projects is described which require IEE in Schedule 1, and in Schedule 2 the list of those projects which require EIA is provided. For example, the listing or the distribution of the projects requiring IEE and EIA have been made on 3 bases. The first is the cost of the project, second is the scale of the project, and the third is the nature of the project. For example, the highways with a total cost of less than rupees 50 million will require IEE, and highway projects with a total cost of more than 50 million rupees will require EIA. Similarly, water supply and treatment plants with total cost of rupees 25 million or lesser would fall under the category of IEE, and with those Those projects with cost greater than 25 million would fall under the category of EIA. Similarly, for hydroelectric power generation, the decision is based on the capacity of the project. If the capacity of hydroelectric power generation project is less than 50 megawatt, IW would be required, and if it is greater than 50 megawatt, an EIA would be required. The third basis for categorization, as I mentioned earlier, is on the basis of nature of the project. For example, some industries which are heavy polluting industries like cement and chemical industries, they would always require a full-scale environmental impact assessment EIA. Scoping is an early step which begins right after the screening is completed. Scoping refers to identifying or defining the key issues to be included in the overall environmental assessment process. It is an open, interactive process which involves consultation with relevant agencies, stakeholders, local representatives, and experts related to this field. It is an important step because it lays the foundation of an EIA by identifying the boundaries of the EIA study. Scoping is a critical step in an EIA process as it defines and identifies the issues that are likely to be of importance during the EIA and eliminates those that are of little concern. Typically, this process concludes with the establishment of a TOR, terms of reference, for the preparation of an EIA. In this way, scoping ensures that EIA studies are focused on the significant effects and time and money are not wasted on unnecessary investigations. The consideration of alternatives to a proposal is a requirement of many EIA systems. During the scoping process, alternatives to a proposal can be generated or refined either by directly or by reference to the key issues identified. The comparison of alternatives will help to determine the best method of achieving the project objectives while minimizing the environmental impacts, or more creatively we can say it would indicate the most environmentally friendly project alternative. Depending on the timing, the type and range of alternatives open to consideration might include the demand alternatives, for example using energy more efficiently rather than building more generation capacity. It may be the activity alternative, for example providing public transport rather than increasing the road capacity. Then it may be a location alternative, either for the entire proposal or for components of the project. For example, a location of a dam or an irrigation channel, the route of the road, for example, can be altered and compared. Then it may be a process alternative, for example, the use of waste minimizing or energy efficient technology can be an alternative. And then lastly, particularly in the foreign funded projects, no project alternative has also to be considered. Often, however, the consideration of alternatives is a superficial rather than a meaningful exercise. This is particularly true of private sector proposals where the requirements to analyze alternatives is less than for uh, the comparable public sector proposals. It is also true for all proposals that are submitted to AEA when planning is nearly complete and the components and location are already fixed. However, if the consideration of alternatives is done with true intentions to reach to a conclusion that what is the best environmentally friendly alternative, this is really a meaningful exercise. Another very important step is to conduct the baseline studies. These studies include the collection of information on the characteristics of existing environmental and socio-economic conditions in the study area. This is important because without knowing the existing environmental and socio-economic situations, the impacts related to the project activity could not be estimated, could not be predicted for future. So these studies basically give baseline information against which the prediction and assessment of the impacts can be made. So overall, human environment can broadly be categorized into three components. First is physical and chemical, second the biological or ecological, the third is socio-cultural. Physical and chemical environment includes topography, soil and geology, hydrology, air quality, noise levels, etc. Similarly, biological environment include the flora and fauna, species of the trees, wildlife, fish, birds, and with particular or special reference to the endangered species in the area. In the third category, socio-cultural environment includes demography, historic sites, public facilities, per capita income, literacy rate, commercial activities, social and behavioral attitudes, customs of the local communities, local public health and environmental facilities. So all these components of human environment are likely to be affected by the development project such as a highway or a dam or a large industrial scale. Even with a small project, some of these components can be affected adversely or positively. So in general, data related to above mentioned components is collected during the baseline studies. Surveys are conducted for determining the biological, ecological and socio-cultural data for collecting that kind of data, whereas to analyze the existing air quality, water quality and noise quality in the area, experiments are conducted, field studies with respect to examining the air, water and noise quality in the area through EPA approved laboratories is conducted. After collecting the baseline data of the project area, impact analysis is carried out. Impact analysis can be divided into three categories or three steps. The first step is identification of the impacts, second is prediction of the impacts, and third is evaluation of the impacts. Identification includes to identify the specific impacts to be investigated and the type of the impact data required for evaluation and presentation to the decision makers. The next step, which is prediction, includes the prediction of the extent and the characteristics of the identified impacts. The third step, which is evaluation, comes after that, which is done to evaluate the importance, significance or acceptability of the impacts based on their prediction. For impact identification, there are several methods or techniques which are used. For example, checklists, matrices, networks, overlays and GIS, and professional judgment. Let's first talk about checklists. Checklists are standard lists of the types of the impacts associated with a particular type of project. The types of checklists include simple checklist, descriptive checklist, scaling checklist, and weighting scaling checklist. This represents a typical scaling checklist for a project. Here are the items listed of the of the environmental components which may be affected by any project activity. And here are the two main categorizations of the impacts. These include the adverse impacts and these are the beneficial impacts. So here the nature of likely impacts is described with the help of some scales. That's why this is called scaling checklist. Scales include that there are different categories or characteristics of the impacts defined with the help of scale. For example, ST refers to as short-term impacts, LT stands for long-term impacts, L stands for local impacts, and W stands for widespread impacts. And similar is the nomenclatures or symbols assigned for other types of the impacts. The second method, alternate method for impact identification is the matrices. Matrix method identify interactions between various project actions and environmental parameters and components. They incorporate a list of project activities with a checklist of environmental components that might be affected by these activities. An interaction matrix is developed by combining these two lists. So similar to checklists, matrices can be of different types. For example, simple interaction matrix, scaling matrix, weighting scaling matrix, etc. This table represents a simple environmental impact matrix for a pulp and paper mill construction. Here is a list of project activities and here is a list of environmental components that might be affected by these activities. So interaction of these two will define the particular impact. For example, during plant construction, the effect would be on terrestrial wildlife habitat and wildlife itself. Similarly, during the transport of raw materials, the impacts would be on the air quality and there would be some load on highways and railways. During the emissions, air emissions, the health impact is important. So health impact is identified and air quality would be affected, so air quality is identified. So in this way, in this interaction matrix, simple interaction matrix, the project activities and the relevant environmental impacts are identified. In other types of matrices, such as scaling matrix, these impacts would be identified and scaled. And in weighting scaling matrix, they will be assigned some scale as short-term, long-term, negative, positive, and they will also be assigned some weightage in the form of numbers maybe, as is done in the case of Leopold matrix. Leopold matrix is a very famous example of developing an interaction matrix with applying scales and weights to the project activities and the associated environmental impacts. Another method for impact identification is the networks. Network methods illustrate multiple linkages between the project actions and environmental components. They provide a means for displaying first, secondary, tertiary, and higher order impacts, including the indirect impacts and cumulative impacts. Let's take an example of a network diagram of the causal chain that begins with application of inorganic fertilizers in agriculture. So application of inorganic fertilizer to the soil can affect the water quality, surface water quality, as through the agricultural runoff the nitrogen and phosphorus of these fertilizers can reach the surface water bodies, and they can increase in concentration high enough to cause the excessive growth of algae and aquatic macrophytes, which would result in the dissolved oxygen depletion by a process called eutrophication. So after eutrophication, dissolved oxygen is depleted, and as a result the water quality is affected and the fish and fisheries can be affected. So in this case there is a linkage which is being developed between the project action and the environmental components which will be affected. Another important method for impact identification is the overlays. Overlays is an effective visual aid method which is useful as documentation of existing environmental conditions before the project implementation. In this method, various images of the project area are developed using transparent sheets with respect to various environmental components, and they are placed one over the other so that a composite sheet of image represents all of the environmental components existing prior to the project implementation. This method can assess the impacts with respect to spatial components of the project, and they help particularly in selecting the alternative routes of, for example, highways or railways, and identifying certain types of impacts related to that route selection. This is also useful in case of sensitive lands and cultural sites, etc. Nowadays, instead of using manually prepared images, geographical information system is used in which the various layers of environmental components can be. After impact identification, the next step is impact prediction, which is to estimate the extent and characteristics of the impacts. The general characteristics of the impacts can include the nature of the impact, for example, it's positive or it's negative, it is direct or indirect. Examples of positive impacts may include the creation of jobs with respect to certain projects and the development of overall economy of the country. The negative impacts may include the pollution of air, water, land, removal of vegetation, the habitat loss, loss of cultural sites, etc. So there is a numerous impacts which can be negative with respect to a project. And direct impacts includes, for example, from an industrial area, the water pollution will be generated which may directly contaminate the surface water body. This is a direct impact. Whereas the indirect impact would include that that surface body is going to feed some agricultural area at downstream. So the production of crops, the growth of crops with that contaminated water may also lead to health impacts on the humans. So that would be indirect impact. Similarly, the other characteristics of the impacts may be its magnitude. They may be classified as low, moderate or severe kind of impacts. Then comes its extent and location. For example, whether they are local impacts or they are widespread impacts. Local impacts um, can be, for example, during construction the emission of dust would be a local impact which is only applicable for the vicinity of the project. Whereas during the operation, if the pollution of sulfuric acid, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides is there with respect to an industrial emission, for example, it would cause acid rain, and you know acid rain is a regional pollutant. The boundary of acid rain is not limited to the project boundary, so it is a widespread impact. The next categorization may be on the basis of its duration, whether the project impacts are short term, they are long term, they are intermittent or they are continuous. Mostly the impacts related to the construction phase of the project are short term, whereas impacts related to the operation phase of the projects are long term or continuous. Then comes the reversibility or irreversibility. Some impacts are reversible. For example, during the construction, if there is some impact on the vegetation around the road due to the excavation and destructions by other project activities, after the project construction is completed, that vegetation may be naturally restored. So that is maybe naturally or manually restored. So that is an reversible impact. But some impacts are irreversible. For example, uh, use of limestone hillocks for the cement production can cause a loss of natural scenic beauty. So that aesthetic impact is an irreversible impact. Similarly, the likelihood of the impacts, the probability of the impact can also be another characteristic. So the methods of impact prediction include the professional judgment, which can only be applied after so many years of experience in this field and experience with the similar projects as well. Another method is quantitative mathematical models, experiments and physical models, case studies or references of the similar projects. So any of these methods where applicable and where appropriate can be used to predict the environmental impacts of certain projects. Quantitative mathematical models used for air pollution dispersion includes AirMod modeling system or DISPERS model. US EPA, United States Environmental Protection Agency, provides some freewares of air pollution dispersion models like AirMod and water quality models like Qual2K and WASP. So these models can be used to predict the concentrations of environmental pollutants with respect to their geographical, with respect to their spatial and temporal distribution. Similarly, noise models are available which can help to calculate the impact on the noise pollution of a particular area after development of particularly the highways or airports. So once the identification and prediction of the impacts is concluded, those impacts may be evaluated on the basis of certain significance criteria. For example, impacts may be called significant based on environmental loss and deterioration, if some social impacts are resulted from environmental changes, based on non-conformity with environmental standards, and probability and acceptability of the risk with respect to public concern. So simply as practical guidance, impacts are considered significant if they are extensive over space and time, they are intensive in concentration or in relation to assimilative capacity of a water body or any environmental component. If they exceed environmental standard or threshold, this is what non-conformity with environmental standard means. It means that after prediction you come across a concentration of air pollutants or water pollutants or noise pollution which exceed the standards of the local agencies, then these impacts would be called significant. And if the impacts do not comply with the environmental policy or land use plans of the area, if they affect the ecological sensitive areas and heritage resources, if they affect community lifestyle, traditions, land uses and values, then these effects or these impacts would be termed as significant environmental impacts. Once the significant environmental impacts have been identified, mitigation measures should be suggested for those significant impacts. The purpose of mitigation is to find better ways of doing things to enhance environmental and social benefits of a project, and particularly to ensure that residual impacts are within acceptable levels of standards. For example, for air pollution or water pollution, if the environmental impact was exceeding the environmental standards, then it was categorized as significant impact. So after mitigation, the residual impact on air pollution or water pollution should be well within the standards of water and air quality. The general framework for impact mitigation is the first priority should be given to avoidance of impact. Then if cannot be avoided, then it should be minimized, and in other case it should be compensated. Impact avoidance can be achieved by not undertaking certain projects or project elements, by avoiding environmentally sensitive areas, and impact minimization can be achieved by scaling down or relocating the proposal, by redesigning elements of the project, or by taking measures to manage the impacts. For example, for air pollution in an industry, air pollution control devices can be installed. Similarly, for water pollution, wastewater treatment plant should be installed. So similar management measures to minimize the impacts, to keep them well below the estimation standard, the emission standards. The last component, that is the compensation, can be achieved by restoration of the site to its previous state if possible, or replacement of the environmental values lost due to a particular project at another location. For example, if 50 number of trees are to be cut during construction of a particular industry, for example, or a housing scheme, then 10 trees for each one tree being cut should be planted at some other location. So that would be replacement of this lost environmental value at another location. After suggesting mitigation measures for significant environmental impacts, an impact management plan should be provided. The purpose of the impact management is to ensure that suggested mitigation measures are implemented. So to fix the responsibilities of implementing these mitigation measures is one objective, and establishing the systems and procedures for this purpose is another objective, that when and how these steps would be implemented and by whom. Another objective is to monitor the effectiveness of the mitigation measures. Since the impacts are predicted and evaluated based on the future estimations, therefore the mitigation measures may or may not be effective. So you have to monitor the effectiveness of the mitigation measures, and you have to take actions when unforeseen or larger than the estimated impacts occur. The outcome of an environmental management step would be an environmental management plan. A more recent term used for the internationally funded projects particularly is Environmental and Social Management Plan, ESMP. Since they consider the social impacts equally important as the environmental impacts, therefore a parallel social impact assessment is conducted, and lastly the environmental and social management plan is provided. So that is part of an overall EIA, environmental impact assessment, but relevant experts of sociology are included for that purpose. So an environmental management plan should include summary of the impacts, and then recommended mitigation measures for each of the significant impacts, and then statement of compliance with the standards after the mitigation, allocation of resources and responsibilities, and that is what funds are available for these mitigation measures and who will be responsible during the construction stage, during the operation stage of the project for implementing those mitigation measures. And what would be the schedule of the required action? What would be the frequency of, let's say, measurement of the air pollution? What would be frequency of sprinkling the construction sites with water? Then surveillance, monitoring and auditing programs for the implemented mitigation measures and the residual impacts should also be included in EMP. And lastly, very important is the contingency measures for greater than expected impacts. Some example templates for environmental management plans are shown on the slide, taken from various projects. These are almost similar, but there are little bit variations. For example, the first template includes in first column the impacts, in second the mitigation measures of those impacts, then location of implementation, timings, responsible organization for implementation and for monitoring, what should be the monitoring frequency, weekly, monthly, daily, etc. And what should be the unit cost and how to manage that cost. This can also be included in EMP. What would be the source of funding for managing or implementing the mitigation measures. Next template described it as anticipated linkages and sources of impacts, management actions, which are mitigation measures again, and then responsibility and time frame, targets to achieve. This is a new addition, that what target standards have to be achieved for particular environmental impacts, for example, air, noise, water, and what would be the cost on these mitigation and monitoring measures, and what would be the monitoring parameter. Right? For air quality, for example, which pollutants are to be measured. For water quality, similarly, which pollutants are to be measured. Another simple EMP template includes possible impacts, their mitigation, their monitoring indicators, that whether you observe it visually or you have to monitor something, you have to measure something by instruments, what should be the timing, responsible party and the cost estimates. So they are almost similar with a little bit variations as I said earlier. So any of the good template can be used depending upon the type of the project and the details we have to go in. Let's take an example mitigation plan of Tunnel 4 extension hydropower project of Sarbela Dam, which was recently completed in perhaps 2018. So these are some impacts: soil erosion and contamination, air quality and noise, for which the mitigation measures and actions to be taken are suggested. For example, to avoid soil erosion, mitigation measures include to avoid vehicular traffic on unpaved road, to minimize vehicles and machinery near water channels, water reservoirs, to avoid repairing of vehicles in the field, and if unavoidable, impervious sheeting should be used. And there are certain environmental control plans relevant to each mitigation measures. For example, ECP 1 for soil erosion, ECP 8 for air quality, ECP 9 for noise quality. Similarly, mitigation for air quality includes properly tuned and maintained vehicles, spraying water on soil, avoid vehicle movement through populations as far as possible. If unavoidable, speed should be reduced. Silencers should be used in vehicles to control noise. Nighttime traffic should be reduced or avoided. And vehicle movement through population should be avoided. And if it is unavoidable, then reduced speed and avoidance of horns is the mitigation measure. So these are just example mitigation measures. These are not, you can say, the ideally described So taking example of the same project T4 extension at Tarbela Dam, the monitoring plan example is shown here. In that environmental and social assessment report, environmental mitigation plan and environmental monitoring plan are separated. Whereas in certain projects like the Dasu hydropower project or some highway projects or airport projects and many other examples, environmental management plan includes both the mitigation as well as the monitoring plans. So this is the choice of the people who are doing or who are conducting the environmental impact assessment, how they prepare these plans. So as example of monitoring plan for air quality, ambient air quality should be monitored at construction site and labor camp, which is Chinese labor camp and one was Pakistani labor camp there. Frequency is described as once every 2 months. And methodology is that ambient air quality monitoring equipment should be used to monitor the regular air quality parameters. And documentation should be saved as a record for sampling and analysis. Similarly, for dust emissions, construction site and labor camp and project roads, all are three monitoring locations. Routine monitoring should be conducted as uh, felt appropriate by the concerned environmental managers there at site. The methodology should be visual observation. Right? This is the indicator that dust emission is being raised due to vehicular movement or due to excavation or not. And digital cameras can be used to capture that dust emission if any. Record of visual observation or photographs can be used as documentation. So I hope you have learned the overall process of EIA with necessary details of each step. We could not go into details because this topic of EIA is just a small portion of your overall course. However, I will share with you 2 or 3 good EIA reports conducted in Pakistan of mega projects of civil engineering interest. These reports will help you understand the process of EIA in some more detail.